Okay. Another unexplained weirdness. Oh. Probably.
So is there any reverb? Or is it just
Nope,
clear?
not right now.
Okay. I shut that my other laptop off, so. Did you say that you thought that the dumpsters at the mill site were subject to an encroachment agreement? Encroachment agreement?
I believe so. I think that's how we did it.
Okay. I was just making notes, so, and I have your comments from last week. Jen's initial look says the property across the way is not as a contributing structure. It's not listed
Oh,
with
okay.
what we have here. She was gonna do some more checking.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Good
Hi there,
evening.
Richard.
How
How
are
are
you?
you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah. So when are we going to start doing these in person?
I think we're aiming, barring other complications from the outside world, I think we'll try and do the first meeting in April,
Oh, nice.
um,
Okay,
start then.
cool. Well, it's not like I come every time, but when I do come, I sometimes like to come and say hi to you guys in person.
For sure.
Yeah,
We enjoy having you too.
yeah. So lots of excitement today. Tom's going to join us also, but we'll keep our part down to just a few minutes because I know you've got executive session coming up and all that. So we won't keep you long.
We don't have an executive session tonight.
Oh, Tom told me you did. Oh,
No,
nope. Okay,
we,
cool.
we went into executive session for the interviews, but that was on Saturday.
Yeah, he told me that, but I didn't
Yeah.
know you were, I thought you were doing something else tonight. Okay,
Nope.
okay.
Hi, Mary.
Hey, Lynette, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good
Hi,
evening,
Deanne.
Your Honor.
Hi
Good
there.
evening. How are you, Mary?
Good,
Good
how
to
are
see
you?
you. I'm good.
Hi, Deanne.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Cool.
Or I can.
Steve, you look like that old little joke of Kilroy was here with your head just like, he's like here.
You're muted.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Sorry, Mary, but that's that's kind of right. It was just half his head.
I was trying to see if his head was down and he was trying to fake us out like he was really working hard, you know?
was thinking
Not
about
that you
taking,
don't.
thinking about taking a nap.
Taking a nap.
Any ideas why my video isn't working? I don't really mind, but I didn't set this or something.
No,
When my video isn't working, it's always on my end. It's not on anybody else's end. Is it giving you any message if you try and turn on the video?
I'm playing, there we
There you
go.
go.
Yay,
Oop,
where'd it go?
you went away. You were there.
I don't know. You touched something and then you touched it again.
we have
There
you
found
are.
there.
Don't touch it again. Yeah.
Really?
Uh,
Hello, Jerry.
Hi, Judge. Good to see you.
Good to see you. How you been?
I've been well, thank you. Busy, as always.
Well, I met you probably 40 years ago and you were busy then. So
I was busy then.
Yeah.
Yeah. I keep meaning to catch up.
Yeah.
Maybe I
Well,
should give up if I haven't gotten it done in 40 years.
there you go.
Wow.
Well, we should catch up sometime when you got actually a few minutes.
I'd like that. We'll plan on it.
I've been caregiving for my wife because she had a knee surgery, but she's getting along pretty well now, and I can sneak out for periods of time. So if you want to get together sometime, let me know.
I'll shoot you a message. Thanks.
That would be nice.
And commenting as Rob Connell's secretary, he's not going to be here tonight.
Okay, I see. And there's John. There's Rich.
Hello, everybody.
Wow,
Hi
no
there.
kids running around in the background, no boys and girls to club to,
No, not today. But I took today off, but I ended up down there for about 7 hours anyways. Got home about an hour ago.
Ah,
great vacation day there.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You have a nice Georgetown shirt on.
Absolutely. I had about 3 other meetings today, so I had to represent.
hmm. Well, it is 6 PM. I think we'll go ahead and get started. I'm hoping Paul's just having a little, I'm hoping Paul's just on his way. So I'd like to call the meeting of the Georgetown Board of Selectmen to order. It is March 22nd, 2022. And it is 6 PM, as I said. And I've got a flag set up if you want to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
For which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands,
one nation, under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
with
and justice
liberty and
for all.
justice for all. Okay. Roll call. I am Lynette Kelsey, police judge. Rob Connell is not going to be here. Deanne Powell,
Present.
John Jennings,
Here.
Mary Smith. Oh, Paul
Here.
Hingen, is he here yet? Paul is not here yet. Okay, Mary Smith
Here,
and Rich Barrows.
There's Paul.
There's Paul.
Hi, guys.
All right, great. Agenda approval. Does anybody have anything they want to add to the agenda tonight? If not, who would like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I will.
second,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I
Any opposed? Great. Motion passes. Audience business.
don't
Members of
see-
the audience have 5 minutes to present any matter of interest not already on the agenda.
I don't
We've
see
got
anybody,
two-
Lynette.
Well, we've got 2 attendees. And
Both of them
I
are
don't
on the
think either.
agenda.
Yep, correct. Okay. Seeing none, we will move on. The payables that we have before us tonight are from March 4th through March 17th, 2022. And Mary Sims is here, so if anybody has any questions for her about any of the payables.
I have a question.
Yes, John.
Page 2, 1060, 660, road improvement, retainage. What's going on with that?
That is for the retainage on Tao Street that was withheld from their
Oh.
payment.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions on the payables tonight?
I have a question about definition. On page 1, the police department has an earpiece for radio. What is that?
The little wire that goes from their radio into their ear, so they can hear their radio no matter what they're doing.
Is that a replacement or is it always been this way? Is it a new system? What is it?
No, it's a replacement.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions on the payables? And would anyone like to make a motion to approve the payables as presented?
So moved.
Second.
There was a tie on the second. We'll give it to
Give
Rich
it to
because he heard.
Rich was faster than me.
John's always in there. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the payables from March 4th through March 17th, 2022 as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Minutes that we have tonight to approve are from our March 8th meeting, 2022. Any comments or questions or additions?
I emailed Jen with some minor corrections, just so you know.
I
Just
called her with 2
typos
of
and
them
stuff.
as well.
Okay.
Yep. Deanne, yes?
I don't find any place in it where it's mentioned that for the meetings for the TA candidates that the selectmen were going to be barred from attending them. And I think that's hugely important. And I think it split the community and there's all kinds of problems I have with it. But I do think it should be in the minutes. And I'm not seeing anything about, you know, setting up a schedule that excluded the selectmen.
Well, the section in here about the administrator candidates, it's a very brief summary. Personally, I don't think that needs to be in there, but how does the rest of the board feel?
I'm okay with that.
Would we not have had to say or indicate that we were having a special meeting or scheduled a special meeting if all of us had appeared or had the opportunity to appear? I guess I'm
No,
concerned
not
about
really,
that.
because if we were sitting there observing how the candidates interacted with like the public or the rest of the people on our staff or whatever, that's a whole different ballgame than doing any kind of an assessment on them. That's information gathering. And it really needs to be on here because in talking with several of the locals, they're not happy that we didn't get to sit in. They're also not happy that we were segregated out instead of having just a nice big group meeting like has traditionally happened.
Well, I don't know that that's actually a tradition that's gone on. Jerry, I'm going to defer to you on whether that would have had to have been declared and, you know, posted as an actual meeting if we had multiple selectmen turn up for that.
I think we had already done the posting, right, for that
No.
meeting anyhow. Is that not correct, Steve?
So
No,
the meeting,
it was a meet and greet for the public. It was not posted
Right.
as a
Okay.
attendance by the board.
Yeah, where, the open meetings law is clear that where the board is expected to take action, you have to post 24 hours ahead of time. Where board members show up, that's an open meeting, but does not require advance posting.
okay. Okay. Yes, Deanne?
What I'm trying to get into the minutes is the fact that we as Board of Selectmen were prohibited from going to either of the meet and greets. And we were excluded from a very important information gathering situations that for me made or break the thing. It needs to be in the minutes because it's important that people in the future understand that this decision was made without letting the Board of Selectmen have every possible tool to assess the finalists.
So I guess I look at it differently, Deanne. I look at it as we had our chance to interview the candidates at the meeting on Saturday. The public had their, please let me speak.
I'm letting you speak. I just have a
Okay.
comment to make on that.
And the public had their meet and greet Friday evening, and staff had their turn on Friday afternoon. And the board doesn't have to participate in all of the meetings with the candidates. They were specific to staff. I preferred to stay out of it because I want staff to
Yeah,
relate to them without me involved. I don't think any of the board should be there for the staff meeting. And I also agreed with the determination that we didn't need to be there for the public meet and greet because that was for the public and we had our turn on Saturday. Let me talk to the rest of the board, however. John?
I was fine with how it went down. I thought it was smoother than the one we did years ago. And I thought it was a good way to do it.
Okay. Mary?
I'm fine with the way the process was handled. If we do include something like that in the minutes, I would ask that we give Jen Yopsky the opportunity to review the tapes and make sure that it's worded appropriately.
Okay, thank you. Rich?
I think we had a wonderful opportunity during the interview process, and we didn't weed anybody out during the staff or the public section. And I think we had an opportunity to send whoever we wanted to the meet and greet, as long as we didn't show up, and gather as much information as we needed to by from our constituents if we wanted or so choose to do that. Because they would have been much more freer to ask questions of the candidates, find out about how they felt about different things. And I appreciated how streamlined the process was, because I went through this process a few other times, and I thought Steve and Mary did a good job setting it up and implementing the process.
Okay. Paul, did you have any comments on how the process went? I know you weren't able to
Yeah.
join us on Saturday, but
I couldn't join you Saturday, but isn't it against the rules or regulations that 3 or more board members are not supposed to informally gather?
Jerry just gave us the rundown on that,
Yeah.
but he can recap again.
No, there's the open meetings law says if there's 3 or more there, even though there's no agenda to be acted on, the meeting has to be open. And of course, that meeting was open to the public. It does not have to be posted in advance as a meeting of the Board of Selectmen. In addition to that, you mentioned informal gatherings. The open meetings law is specific in saying that chance social gatherings are not subject to the open meetings law, meaning if 3 of you are going to go to a wedding, that's a wedding. That's an informal or if 3 of you happen to show up at a coffee shop, that does not trigger the open meetings law. So under both headings, I'd put it under the first heading. It was a meeting organized by the town at which if board members showed up, there was no agenda for them to act on. So the meeting was required to be open, but it was not required under the open meetings law to be public or posted in advance.
Okay. So, well, per Mary's suggestion, do we want the recording of the meeting to have Jen go back to the recording of the meeting and just look at the wording and add something, or do we think it doesn't need to be added to the minutes? Yes, Deanne.
I have already done that, but it would be good for Jen to do it too. I was asking questions because Steve was not being real clear about dates and times for the different meet and greets. And I was distracted by asking a question about that, going to write it down. He throws in a sentence that says the selectmen aren't allowed to go to any of these things. And then he says another thing, which I wanted clarified as to what the date was. And I should probably apologize to the town because I got distracted by trying to figure out the dates and write them in my notes instead of jumping on that we weren't allowed to go. Personally, so there is a sentence in there where it says Board of Selectmen aren't allowed to attend. However, it's important that we be allowed to gather whatever information we need. Everybody learns differently. Everybody keys into things differently. To me, it's really important to see how each of these candidates related to the public when they ask questions are people who are working. I get the concept of if your boss is standing there, you may not be as open about commenting as you would without them. But I resent that I have only been given secondhand information. I was not allowed to attend those things. Body language is a huge clue as to how these people, who they are, what they are, how they think, if they're used to small towns, if they're used to big cities, all of that shows up at, like, for example, the public meeting. We should have been allowed. At the very least, we are all citizens of this town and therefore should have been allowed to go that way instead of as, an official Board of Selectmen. I feel that I lost an invaluable opportunity and therefore had no way to make an intelligent vote. If a friend of mine says, hey, go find me a house, I want to move to Colorado, and then I'm not allowed to go look at that house, I can't recommend that house to them. And it's the same general concept here, that each of those people have to be qualified or they wouldn't have gotten as far as they have in the process. But being qualified and being a fit personality-wise and all of that doesn't show up on written documents. And it won't show up on the interviews that we had the opportunity to make in person. So we really needed to be able to go to these public meetings. And it needs to be in the minutes that we were prohibited from doing that.
All right. Is everybody okay with having that line added to the minutes?
If it was in the minute, if it's in the tape recording, it's fine. I'm okay with it. Sure.
Okay.
Right. I do disagree with a couple things in your analogy, Deanne, because some of the questions that each of those candidates had to answer under fire with body English, they could bring documentation. They could specifically have to answer questions about working in historical districts or living in them or dealing with them. Those were set up and you were there. It's when your analogy about buying a house, you were in the house. You prepared yourself, you went into the interviews and you missed an opportunity. And that was your chance to test drive the car, to check out if the toilet's flushed in the house or whatever it might be. And I was really sad that you recused yourself because you couldn't be at the public meeting, because I think in direct interviews, that is a heck of a way to put people on the spot. And you're very good at doing that. And we missed you, and that was your choice.
So, yes, Deanne?
different when the candidates are relating to the Board of Selectmen than when they're relating to the public and when they're relating to Road and Bridge. I don't know, any of our departments. It's different. Anyway, it still needs to be into the minutes that we were prohibited from freely partaking of whatever information we could gather. It's a really important way for me. I need to see how people function, and functioning with just the Board of Selectmen, while Rich's point is valid that we could put them on the spot, it doesn't show how they're going to relate to
Okay,
Mary Lou Rutherford, you know, any of our real people.
all right. Thank you, Deanne. You know, I have heard what you said. We're also right now focused on the minutes. And if we put that sentence, however it appears on the tape, on the recording, into the minutes, it sounds like we're all in favor of doing that. And that's the question at hand, please. So,
Lynette, procedurally,
yes.
you're right. You're at approval of the minutes. That's the topic in front of you.
Yes.
So you really have two choices. It's a motion to approve the minutes as presented, or it's a motion to direct town clerk review the minutes with respect to the meeting at issue and provide a revised version for the board to look at next meeting. It's one of those two motions.
Okay. Who would like to make?
I move the second suggestion from our attorney.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to have our town clerk revise the minutes, review the recording and revise the minutes and present a revised version of the minutes at our next meeting. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any
Yes.
opposed? Okay.
Did you
Motion
vote for it or against it, Deanne?
I guess I have to vote for it because as long as it's put in the minutes, that's cool. And it won't be decided until next time. So, okay.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we have resolution number 4, series 2022, a resolution approving a temporary non-exclusive easement agreement between the Duncan Family Trust and the town of Georgetown.
Steve, is this you or me?
No, I'll get it real quick, I guess.
Okay,
Was approached by Neil Duncan with regard to the property that's owned by the Duncan Family Trust over on 22nd Street. There is a portion of the walking bicycle pedestrian trail that runs adjacent to the property, subject property, but there is also an encroachment of the trail on their property. And so Mr. Duncan was generous enough to offer an opportunity to take care of that encroachment rather than having the town move the trail to really a swampy area. It actually wouldn't have worked out very well at all. So Neil went through and he did all the survey work and came up with a legal description. Jerry put together an easement agreement that was reviewed by Mr. Duncan's attorney. I think the both of them have come up with an agreement that works for the town and satisfies both parties. And so realize it is a temporary agreement, but it's not one of those agreements that I would expect that they'll decide to go ahead and pull away next week. I think they just didn't want something in the perpetuity in case they decide to do something much different with the property, and I can respect that. I think since this was initiated by the Duncan family, I think it's their intent that we'd be able to enjoy that property for some time in the future. And again, because we don't have to move the trail, I think it's a great win for the town. And so I would recommend approval of resolution 4.
okay. Any questions or comments from the board on this? All right. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve Resolution number 4, series 2022.
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I make a motion to approve resolution number 4, series 2022, resolution approving temporary non-exclusive easement agreement between the Duncan Family Trust and the town of Georgetown.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 4, series 2022. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have an amendment to a previous contract with Robert Hamilton. Amendment number 1. And this is to add some time onto and duties onto his previous contract. Steve, do you want to?
Yeah, this has been contemplated for some time. Obviously, Bob was retained by the town last year in order to administer to the construction and the placement of the restrooms at Strauss Park. Since Bob has been a pretty integral part of phase 2 of that project, there had been a thought, and I know a question from at least one of the committees, must have been Park and Rec, as to his interest in continuing on, making sure that that project's managed and supervised as they move forward with it in sometime in May, as approved by the last board meeting. Mr. Hamilton's current contract allows for written amendments to occur. So I'd, rather than rewriting an agreement or anything like that, we just took advantage of expanding the duties and scope of the work that Bob's going to do. The timeline remains the same, and all we did was take his existing stipend, hourly stipend, and increased it by a not to exceed amount that Bob thinks will be acceptable. And so I would ask that the board go ahead and approve amendment number 1 to the professional services contract with Bob Hamilton.
Okay, any questions on this amendment? Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to approve amendment number 1?
We
Come
need to go in
on.
alphabetical order, for crying out loud. Come on.
I don't have it in front of me, but I would like to make a motion to approve amendment 1 to extend that contract.
Okay, I'll read the recommended motion and you can say so moved. Okay, Rich?
There you go.
Okay, I move to approve amendment number 1 of the professional services contract with Robert Hamilton as presented, and authorize the interim town administrator to sign said amendment on behalf of the town of Georgetown.
I'll
So moved.
second.
So moved.
Okay,
That was a mouthful, Lynette. Good job.
yes, it was. Yes, it was. So it's been moved and seconded to approve amendment number 1. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
We take your job very seriously, Bob.
I appreciate that.
And thank you for all your hard work.
And I could give you a up to the minute update on where the restroom is. It is finally in production.
Ooh.
They had promised it would start production on the 21st, and it did. And I'm waiting for a prognosis on when they will finish it and then make arrangements to get it shipped. So I think we're still looking at, probably mid-April to get it in place. And I'm in the process of putting an inquiry together to get the electrical work done to hook it up. And I think we already have a plan for get the plumbing hooked up. So.
Awesome.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, thank you so much. Next,
Thank you.
we have Municipal Court Judge Richard Toussaint here to give us an update on the Georgetown Municipal Court, current legislation and need for lobbying. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I can't ever tell. I am not muted. Okay. appreciate you all always giving us some time to bring things in from the court. And unfortunately, it's not always great news because municipal courts are getting hammered across the country. I think unfairly. I think we do a great job and serve justice well, but perhaps other municipal courts aren't doing that, or perhaps other people just think that they aren't. I don't know which it is, but in any case, there's 3 pieces of legislation I want to bring up that are, we have a legislative committee of the Municipal Judges Association, and then we also have hired lobbyists from the Colorado Municipal Judges Association, which I'll speak to in a minute. But the 3 pieces that are currently there is, one, they want a make a change in the legislation to have a bond hearing within 48 hours of a defendant's arrest. That is obviously going to be difficult in our situation if it was required in all cases, because we don't have necessarily all the technical wherewithal to get a judge, a clerk, and an attorney for that defendant all in place within 48 hours, and to have even an electronic meeting. Fortunately, we don't have many bond hearings. Normally, what we do is have a, for the few warrants we issue, we go ahead and have them picked up, booked, opportunity to be aware that they can pay their fine, and then they're released with a sheet of paper to tell them to come back to our court at our next court date. And so we don't have to have bond hearings, and without bond hearings, they're not in custody at the next hearing, so we don't have to pay for an attorney to represent them at that next hearing. So that's how we have been handling it for the last few years since they changed the law and required rapid bond hearings. However, this is even going to make it more stringent, but I don't think it's really going to apply to Georgetown, because for the most part, we do a bring them in and then release them with a personal recognizance bond. So they don't have to actually post any money. They just have to state that they will show up in court. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but they often do. It's not a perfect solution, but given our lack of capabilities to respond with an attorney that they would be entitled to, as well as to have a court have a actual session within 48 hours, or even the current 4 days, is pretty difficult. So we just don't do it. Another issue is that they are raising the level. Again, we don't have a lot of juvenile cases, but they are going to raise the age from which a juvenile can be detained or charged with a crime from age of 10 to 13. That sounds pretty innocuous unless it's a crime of violence, then, and it probably wouldn't be written to municipal court. Marshall Williams is here, and he would, I'm sure, back me up on that they would write that directly into the state court system. But nonetheless, that's in violence cases, can a 12-year-old actually commit violence that should be charged as a crime? I think there are instances where that is true, but the legislature is looking at it differently. There are a bunch of amendments to that one. I don't know how that's going to pass out of the session, but given the leadings of this legislature, it's probably going to come out in some form. And then the final one is that more people are going to be eligible to have their records sealed. This bill has already passed out of the Senate Judiciary Committee and has gone to appropriations. We have, as a judges association, we have concerns and are pointing out some unintended consequences that we see. So it's ongoing, but it will be, again, it will probably pass out in some kind of fashion soon. But the Appropriations Committee does look at these things for any cost to the state. They do not worry about the towns or the cities. They only worry about the state. So if there's cost to the state, then those have to be addressed, and the money has to be found in the budget amount for the state for next year. But if it's only cost to you all as a town, then that isn't really applicable. So those are the three. None of them are earth-shattering, but I think you see that there's definitely a trend to try and tie the hands of law enforcement to some degree, but specifically the courts to enforce what law enforcement brings to us. So I wanted you to be aware that that's still ongoing. As I mentioned, the Colorado Municipal Judge Association does have a lobbying group. I assume that you all are in the Colorado Municipal League, and if so, you have your own lobbyists there and probably don't care about ours, and that's fine. But some towns have seen the need to spend money to bring in a voice for the court system. And I'm just making you aware, and I sent a sheet to Jen, and I think it's probably in your packet that has that in there. If you decide for this year, next year, or sometime in the future that Georgetown wants to help with a educational efforts, it is a lobbyist, and they have to be called a lobbyist, but it's mostly, on our point, is mostly just education about how these things impact the courts. So that's basically the main things. Now, that's pretty much all I had to bring to you tonight. There is one other thing, and that is there has been a discussion about how we can collect on judgments and fines that have not been paid. And that discussion is ongoing, but revolves around, now that we no longer in Colorado enforce the outstanding judicial warrant system, that people's driving privileges will not be revoked by DMV in the state of Colorado if they fail to pay their fines. That brings a question to whether or not there should be any collection efforts made after we go ahead and assign a fine, cost, surcharges, and make that in many times a default judgment. And that's something we leave to you, the board, but more specifically to the town administrator and your town staff, on whether or not it should be turned over to a collections corporation to, try and collect that money on a contingency fee. We won't order that unless you want us to do that. What we would do, because we don't really have the background information about how easy this person is to get a hold of, And do we have a good mailing address, good email, good phone number, those sorts of things. So I really think that what we will do is order the fine, charges, code costs and surcharges as what the defendant is owing to the town. But at that point, whether you turn it over to a collection agency will have to be up to your administrative staff. And so you may want to give direction to them on, as I understand it, you have something of a contract with a collection agency, but I don't know if you use it for other departments and whether or not you want to use it for the court system. So those are my 2 points, and I do see a hand.
Yep, Deanne?
If somebody doesn't pay their fines, like you're talking about possibility of turning to collections, should they show up a second time in court, a repeat offender kind of thing? Can you use that to implement something more strenuous because they had blown off the first agreement?
Well, yes. First of all, if it is an agreement, absolutely. And in fact, there are consequences for blowing off those agreements. Or even if if someone says, oh yeah, I'm going to fix this right up and never have this happen again. And we say, okay, well, we will suspend part of your fine for 6 months so long as that happens. And then they show right back up in court again because they didn't do what they said. We absolutely, that's enforceable. And normally it's part of the agreement that we just put that fine that they got suspended the first time right back on them. That's typical. But in these cases, it's usually failures to appear. And that's what we have. They just don't show up. Sometimes they're out of state, but sometimes they're just, some of them live in Georgetown and they just don't come to court. And it is those cases that what you're suggesting is more difficult, because while we can try and utilize whatever's available to us, if that case is closed, I can't reopen it to try and get them to pay. So that's a difficulty. I've been restricted in a prior legislation by that.
Yes. Do you have a feel for how often this happens? I mean, is it frequent, and is there just a rough dollar amount that we're looking at that kind of yearly average?
We have a number of failure to shows, failure to appears every month. And our process has been, and we're revising it slightly to try and make it even more enforceable. But our process has been, if they fail to appear at their advisement, we send a show cause notice to them, and it's an official court record a notice that they get. That brings a lot of people in. They, oh my goodness, I just forgot, but then we still have a group that does not show up. And what we have done in the past is gone ahead and default them, set the fine, set the fees, including the OJW fee, and send it over with an OJW, which is an outstanding judicial warrant, or judgment warrant, excuse me, outstanding judgment warrant. We send that to the DMV, and then they send them a letter and saying, oh, you're going to lose your driving privileges. But as of this year, and I told you this last year when I came, that is going away. It has gone away and is no longer enforced in the state of Colorado. However, the state of Colorado still participates in that process for other states. So when we have out-of-state defendants and we issue that default and that OJW, they can still get a nastogram from their DMV, even though our DMV won't send it to our local people. But what's happening now is, and I've done some research and checked with other judges, and what they're mostly doing is going ahead and ordering the defaults, ordering the OJWs, and if in a year or 2 years it comes back online because they see that it was a mistake, they have taken it out of circulation, then we will not have to go back and revisit all those cases and put them back in that system. How many and how much, it doesn't, that we never get paid on isn't that high. But, and I can't really tell you, Jen could probably tell you better, and Bettina, and I can get you that information, and I will. But I can't give it to you off the top of my head tonight. But it's, the OJW system actually worked quite well. And now we're in a whole new world because we don't have it anymore. So we didn't lose a lot of money prior. And that's why we weren't using a collection agency as a court. We used it a few times, but many years ago, but we haven't used it in recent times. And, but we may have to, or as I said, it's really going to be an administrative decision, and with your all's guidance to the administration on how you want to proceed with that. Because if it does start adding up and we don't get these because there's no OJWs and defaults that have DMV consequences, we could see a rise in the number of, what I fear happening is people learn about these things and go, oh, if you get a city ticket, just blow it off because they can't do anything. And that's when it starts, snowballing and gathering steam, and we suddenly have an issue here that is an unintended consequence, I'm sure, to the legislation that they passed, but nonetheless, it couldn't be a consequence. So I don't know how bad it's going to be, and I think maybe it's better to wait with that question for a year, and maybe that's when we can answer it better, is at the end of 2022, and see how much difference there is in prior years versus this year. I just don't know that we have a good handle on that yet.
Okay. Do we currently have, do you have to wait a certain amount of time before you would then turn that back over to the town and say, we haven't received the fine payment, and so it's up to you to collect if you wish to? Is there
Yeah, no, and it goes directly through Bettina, and she can come right back and talk to Mary and to Jen. So it's all done, and it happens quite quickly. They show up, they're supposed to show up at the March hearing. They fail to appear. I tell them, okay, send out a show cause notice. Show cause notice tells them to come in April. If they fail to show again, then we contact them again if we can, but we set the, at that time, we go ahead and enter a default. We had talked about extending that one more month, and we're still in discussions, Tom and I are, about the best way of doing that. We don't want to stretch these things out, but we also don't want to cut it off before we've utilized our best tools to get the town paid for fines that are judicially imposed. And so that's that's what we're doing. But I would say that they would never be later than 3 months from the date that they're supposed to appear. So that's basically within, they may get there, if they got their receive their citation on the first day of one of the months, and then they'd be in court the next month, and then the following month we'd be ready to turn it over to the town, really, and say, you make that decision. So it's not like, oh, it's a year or anything like that. It's only a couple of months, and then they And then it gets turned over for collections. But we are trying to improve our own collection system at this point, now that we don't have that OJW, by using Bettina to actually call these people and say, do you realize what's going to happen to you, and that, you know, what's really happening here? And a lot of people go, oh my goodness. I mean, she called somebody this week, or I'm sorry, last week, that it was in that position, and we were about ready to turn it over to collections or the next step, whatever that would be. And the lady said, oh, no, I had no idea, and paid her that day. So we're hoping that once we, and the police department is gathering generally the phone numbers now. And so we can actually reach out and call them. And I think that's going to be helpful as well.
Okay.
But
Is there action that the board needs to actually take
no,
in
not
order
tonight.
to
This is,
implement?
yeah, you know, as we implement ours and we see the collections, I will make sure that the town administrator is aware of it through Bettina and Jen, and make sure that we're seeing that we're not getting these things handled on our side, and that you guys may need to give some guidance on whether this gets turned over to a collection agency, or do you want us to do something different on our side before we get to the end of our efforts to try and resolve these cases.
Okay. All right. Appreciate the update. Anybody have any questions for Judge Toussaint? All right. And thank you, and thank Judge Elliott for all your hard work on our behalf.
We're getting it done. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks. Okay, next we have commission appointments. And we had 4 of them. 2 of them were for Design Review Commission, and 2 of them were for Parks and Rec. So the 4 that we had were Robert Hamilton for Design Review Commission, and also Brent Ganzer for Design Review Commission. Steve Calabani is also interested in continuing on Parks and Rec, as is Tom Paxton. They've all been serving on those commissions for quite some time, and they're doing a great job. Anybody have any comments on those reappointments? Yes, Deanne.
Now that we're looking closely at Strauss Park, we're seeing that DHM was indeed not a good fit for what we needed done. It seems to me that both DRC and Parks and Rec could have stopped DHM like a year ago and saved the town some money. These guys are all good citizens in our town, and I respect all of them, but I have a problem that DRC didn't stop it in its tracks, that Parks and Rec approved the master plan. I don't know that I'm willing to not allow these guys to keep going, because they do a good job, but I wanted that information recorded in our consideration of their continuation.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the reappointment of all 4 to their respective commissions?
I'll make the motion to approve all 4 to their respective commissions.
I'll second it, John.
All
Thank
right. It's been moved and seconded to approve all 4 reappointments to their respective commissions. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, town administrator hiring process. So this is for immediate release and from me, Lynette Kelsey, police judge. Today is March 22nd, 2022. The Board of Selectmen is pleased to announce the selection of a new full-time town administrator, Mr. Rick Karoglian of Brush, Colorado. The board recently interviewed 3 finalists and, after much deliberation, has determined that Rick was the best candidate for the town of Georgetown at this time. Rick currently works as the Assistant City Administrator and Community Development Director for the City of Brush. The town will now reach out with an official offer in the form of an employment agreement. It is anticipated that the board will consider this agreement at their April 12th meeting and will also formally appoint Rick as the next town administrator. It is anticipated that Rick will begin his duties on April 18th. So, next up, we have staff items, the interim.
I did want to bring up one thing, also let you know that I'll bug out here in about 5 minutes. One of the things that I talked about is that the town, both contractually for Kent and probably for Rick, allows for the attendance at CCCMA as well as CMA.
Oh, yes.
And so in case I bug out, Lynette, keep up the stream for me.
Yep.
But anyway, Rick would like to attend that conference. It is actually just a couple of days before he starts work. And I did a similar thing when I went to Canyon City. I went to CML. Kent would have gone if he'd have been here, so it should be in the budget. And Rick was wondering whether the town would consider reimbursing him for that expense. I think just the conference itself was $400 and some, and of course there'll be room and board and stuff like that. So you might expend up to between $600 and $800.
Okay. All right. Yes, Mary?
No, I'm for supplementing that, paying for that. I think we're going to reap the benefits, especially since he starts the next day.
Yeah.
So.
I agree.
All right. Yep. Is anyone opposed to that? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Now we can move on to the staff items, the town interim administrator's task list.
Yeah, I didn't do a written report. Like I say, I'm going to bug out in 3 minutes anyway, but I did try to update my task list as best as possible. Actually, I'm starting to work on transition planning. And of course, this task list was something that all the finalists got a copy of. So they were well aware of what's being done and what's coming up and things like that. So I can answer any questions for at least the next 3 minutes.
I'm good.
I didn't have any questions. Rich has a thumbs up. Paul's shaking his head. He doesn't have any questions. He's got thumbs up too. So looks like we're good on that. Does anyone have any other items you want to bring to our attention tonight? Yes, Deanne.
Is this where we talk about COVID?
We can if you wish.
Or does it go further into the, afterward? I'm not sure where it should fit in.
Well, it used to be under staff items and we weren't, there wasn't much to update, so we didn't put it in there. But if you have something, please.
I just wanted to say that the BA2, which is a subvariant of Omicron, is now sitting at about 33% of the cases, but it has jumped basically by 3 times since 2 weeks ago. Consequently, it will soon be the dominant one. It's not generally as lethal as Delta or the earlier ones were, but it's multiple times more catchable. And I think it would be pretty good for the town hall to go back to requiring people that come in wear masks, because I don't want to see our people get sick, which is a pretty good possibility with the BA2.
Also, as a follow-up on that, Deanne, they did report just today that they had tested for it in Pueblo's wastewater system. I hadn't heard anything up in the metro area, but they did say that they found some of it in city of Pueblo wastewater.
Oh, they found it in Denver's
Well, did they?
wastewater
Okay.
system. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
get your news very often.
So, I guess before we do any kind of, putting mask restrictions back in place, I'd kind of like to reach out to the public health director, the county, and see what their take is on it, because, you know, they've even removed their COVID update from him, on their regular meetings. So I don't know whether he was out of town or whether they just decided they didn't need those updates, but I will reach out to Brian Bosshart and find out what the status is, and see if they're going to bring that back, and see what Dr. Ryan has to say. So does anybody have any problem with that? Okay. Okay. Thanks, Deanne. Anything else? Okay. It is 7:01 PM. Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Don't see any. Thanks so much, everybody.
Good night,
Good night.
everybody.
Good
Night.
night.